The Emperor has foreseen a new threat rising against him. The Podwans Podcast.
Greetings and salutations, everyone.
Oh,
What's so funny?
wow.
What's so funny there, Luke?
Wow, nothing. That was hilarious.
I was rudely interrupted of my game of cutie anime hero shooter to do this podcast. Add me to play Stranova. And we can be cutesy anime girls and shoot assault rifles at each other. But we're here to talk about Star Wars.
That we are.
Luke, you look so thrilled.
I am thrilled.
Luke, how are you doing today? How you doing?
You know, I'm doing pretty good.
You got a bunch of mirrors hanging out in the room there. Some elegant mirrors.
I know. It's for wedding stuff.
Ooh, that's exciting. You're getting married soon.
Yep. In like 115 days or something like that.
Wow.
Not like I've been counting or anything.
You know, I'm glad you can count. That's good.
I try.
Yeah.
Also, I love how like Chase, when they said that about like the mirrors, I immediately started like being more attentive to Luke's background, and I just noticed that like the Eye of Sauron like above.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
right?
It's always been there. I mean, how did you miss that?
Don't really look at Luke's background. Look at Luke the person.
I do. I look at Luke's background. I love.
Yeah, because it's so fucking awesome.
Yeah, he's got a great.
Very
I'm moving, so I don't really have a background. I have a bike and some. Some trash.
Loser.
Loser.
Anyway,
I'm about to move into a luxury skyscraper. I don't want to hear it. Hereth, how are you doing?
You know, life's been a little bit crazy, but you know, you adapt, you love, you learn, and also my mind hasn't really been in Star Wars at the moment, so
fucking fake fans, all of you.
Last week
that's the guy
we talked to Belmont and Kaya about Rings of Power Season 3. So that was a fun conversation.
That was a great conversation.
I might be seeing some of those people next week in New York because they're going to Lord of the Rings, Return of the King in Rockefeller Center.
Nice. That'll be fun.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I remember going to see Rogue One in IMAX at the Lincoln Center. That was incredible.
Did that one have an orchestra with it?
No, it wasn't one of those.
It
was just like the super huge IMAX screen. Like the Lincoln Center IMAX is one of the biggest in the country.
I originally saw Rogue One in the Seattle Pacific Center IMAX theater, and that was also a new experience.
So good. What a good movie. But no, so are you seeing Return of the King with an orchestra?
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's going to be really awesome.
Cool. Wait, you said extended edition?
No, I think it's just the theatrical.
Because I would be like, how are the orchestra's arms not broken?
2.5 hours is a long time.
Well, like even like during the Batman, which is 2.5 hours, like during the long orchestra bits, like the orchestra, you can watch like the violinists like arms just drop whenever they had a break, and like you could just watch them pant. Yeah. So I'm like, doing Return of the King, pray for those people.
Believe it or not, I did orchestra as a young child. You realize like orchestral concerts are typically that long.
Like, yeah, but also like
symphonies are not short.
Yeah.
So I think they should do the extended edition.
I think so too, but that's just me. So, but Hereth, no things that you're gonna put up?
Not really. I mean, we got I can put up the comicbook.com article, but also there's not really much to talk about within that article more.
No, I'm saying like the
celebration. Oh, I don't have that prepared because I've been busy with school. I'm a lazy bastard.
Why didn't you just make some generic ones? You could just make some generic ones.
Yeah. Well, today I figured we'd talk more about some of the writing because one of the articles was Daisy Ridley, who played Rey in the sequel trilogy, has kind of been coming out and talking a little bit more about the pre-production stuff of her new movie, the quote new Jedi Order movie, and she's feeling very confident in the writing that has been happening with this new movie. And based on what she's been doing as an actor, like she's been producing films at this point. She's done a bunch of like smaller indie films that were very well written. She did Sometimes I Think About Dying, which is an incredibly well written movie. And she both starred and produced the film. So like she's definitely been out there. She had that one, I don't know if you guys saw the one she did with Tom Holland. That was like, it got panned, and I understand why it got panned. It wasn't necessarily a great movie. I don't think it was terrible.
I think we watched it together in Discord.
No, I watched it on my own. It was like Chaos something.
Yeah, it's like the weird movie where it's like, what if we made like people have internal monologues like in books, but
only men have their thoughts on the outside is the concept of the movie. And it's fine. Like it's not, I don't necessarily recommend it to someone. If you see it on, like if you're scrolling your streaming service and you see it and you're looking for something to watch, sure, we'll put it on. Why not? Like Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley do a very good job.
Hey, not to change the subject, but did you all see the trailer for the Dune Awakening game?
I've seen a couple things about it. Bale's really into it. I'm not super into like survival MMOs.
Is it going to be just on PC?
I think it's going to be on the consoles as well. Maybe it's just PC, but I think it might be on consoles.
Interesting. It looks it looks really sick.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's like PC first, then like console second.
It looks very survival, so like it seems very much like base building, like Ark and Rust and stuff like that. So I don't think it's my cup of tea personally, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Like I like Dune. Dune's cool. But yeah, there was a video I saw from a guy on YouTube that kind of sparked the idea of like talking about the writing, and he brought up some good points, but also like some bad ones. And it was kind of like modern writing compared to like a lot of older writing. And I think it's interesting because I think you can do this with anything. Kind of like before we went live, we were talking about like video game graphics, and it's like, oh, we've already hit like peak realism, like you were saying. And it's like we had that conversation in the 90s. Like we hit peak realism, and it's just one of those things. Like I think that no matter what era you are in, people are not going to be happy with the current thing. There will always be this nostalgia for how things used to be. Like the way animation was done in the 90s, it was way better than it is now, by a lot, compared to a lot of, how a lot of people say and stuff like that. So like, yeah, Chaos Walking, that is, thank you, Emma. That is the movie. It's a fine movie. It's one of those things. I don't think it deserved the hate that it got. But it's also kind of forgotten. Like
it's just aggressively average.
Yes, it's a very okay movie. I think that's a good way of putting it. But yeah, like writing these days, and I know that a lot of people like to say like the Marvelification of writing. And while I understand that is a concept, I also look at it as this is just how movies are written in the 2010s and 2020s.
Yeah, we've talked about this because obviously you're not into Marvel, but like how like you kind of get annoyed when people like overly criticize Marvel for like being, oh my god, it's not as good as it used to be, and like it's not like artsy Marvel movies, and you're just like, it's the fast food of movies, guys. Like when you walk into a Marvel movie, you know what you're getting into. Like so some of my favorite movies, like not our MCU specific, but some of them are like it is just junk food movies. Some junk food is great, but like it's junk food.
As someone who doesn't like Marvel, listening to people who do dive deep into Marvel in the same way we dive deep into Star Wars, like there's more to it than that. I feel like you can see the themes, you can draw parallels between movies, you can see character arcs, insert superhero name here, right? like, people have, talked about like, who Hawkeye is in the first Avengers versus who he is in Endgame is a different character, et cetera, et cetera. And like, I think it's fair. I think you're right. I think that there is kind of those movies are made to be very easily digestible, but they are also, the people who are writing those movies are throwing in these contexts. They're throwing in these clues of like, hey, if you really pay attention, if you really care, there's something there. But you're right, it is easily digestible. And I feel that Star Wars is no different. Like, Star Wars is an easily digestible franchise. There's so much nuance to it, but it is something that you can turn on, see the laser beams and the laser swords go boom boom, and have a really good time with it. I think that's totally fair.
I would agree.
But yeah, like when people talk about like because it's such a common criticism now. It's like, oh, the writing was bad. They had bad writing, or it was poorly planned. It was.
See, like, here's my thing. Like, who made you the academia on fucking writing? Did you go to writing school?
Also,
shut the fuck up.
People talk about like the sequel trilogy being poor planned. I will always point back to the originals and the prequels every single goddamn time. It's like, oh, like the originals are planned with like Luke and Leia and Vader being Luke's father, and like Obi-Wan's theme being the Force theme, and they had to recontextualize it to be the Force theme. And like the prequel trilogy wasn't really planned either. Like, we can like point at the trilogies and be like, none of them were planned.
You can't really say that about the prequels.
You can. Here's what
you knew what eventually what the main plot point was. The main plot point was to get Anakin to point A to point B.
You knew that Anakin was going to turn into Darth Vader. That was about all. That was about all you knew, right? Because let's be real. The only people that exist in the original trilogy versus the prequel that are also in the prequel trilogy, you have Anakin / Darth Vader, you have Obi-Wan Kenobi, you have Yoda, you have Palpatine. That's it.
I guess that's true.
Chewbacca shows up.
Yeah.
R2 and 3PO show up, but like, no disrespect to R2, they're not like plot intensive characters.
I would disagree with that. I think we watch Star Wars through the lens of R2-D2 personally, because he is in every single movie, every single one.
Yeah,
he knows the whole story. He was there from the beginning, and he's there till the end. I think that's how I like to see like the camera view be of.
He's not the focus of The Force Awakens.
Or Rise of Skywalker.
But he's in it.
He's in it.
He's in the movie. He's in the movie. He's seen almost every event happen. Why are y'all fighting me on this?
I'm saying like The Force Awakens, like he's stashed away. He's powered off.
He's a focal point to finding Luke.
Right. I think that my thing about C3PO and R2-D2 is I like them as characters, 100%. I think that as droids, they will never become wildly relatable. I think there will always be background characters. In the same way, I don't think we'll ever get like a TV show or a movie that follows the perspective of a droid. Because the line of sentience is so blurred in Star Wars with droids. Is like, it seems like they have emotion, but they are programmed not to. We see them scream when they get hurt and stuff like that. But like, I think that as far as the planning of the prequels, kind of to bring it back to that point, is my number one thing when I hear people complaining about the Rise of Skywalker being like that there was too much input from the production company, that it wasn't the movie that JJ or Ryan wanted to make, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, Revenge of the Sith is not the movie that George Lucas wanted to make. It's not. That's not what he wanted. That's what Fox wanted. That was Fox saying, get him to Darth Vader now. He's got to become Darth Vader. Stop playing around.
Also, you got to cut out Jar Jar Binks because he's not
Yep.
marketable.
The amount of things that he had to concede on with Revenge of the Sith, because of Fox and because of the reception of the first two movies, that movie is not what he wanted. I don't think that he's never come out and said he's unhappy with it, but he has said it in so many different ways that like it would have been differently. The third movie would have been very different if it would have been entirely up to him. And so I look at Revenge of the Sith as a movie that was written by a studio, and I also look at Rise of Skywalker as a movie that was written by a studio. Like because of the reception of The Last Jedi, and also because of the reception of The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, is why those movies kind of had so much studio interference. And I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing.
No, I agree.
It's one of those things that if it's not just George Lucas, if any creative person is simply making a piece of art for the sake of making the piece of art, let them do what they want to do. Like, let them just go crazy, have fun with it. But from the beginning of Star Wars in 1977, the goal of Star Wars was to make money. And a lot of times creative people lose track of the best way to make the most money because they want to tell this really creative story that may not resonate with a lot of people. And I look at Rian Johnson at this, the big time is.
I mean, you could also look at The Acolyte.
Yeah.
That's another good example.
I mean,
like
during the, I think it said during Skeleton Crew that like Ahsoka, Acolyte, and Skeleton Crew mirror the discourse of the sequel trilogy almost fucking perfectly if you look at it through that lens. Ahsoka's Force Awakens, Acolyte is Last Jedi, Skeleton Crew's Rise of Skywalker. Like, very familiar, like, beginning type show where it's like, oh, it's like very familiar. It's like we're kind of comfort characters, people what we know, but it's like kind of identifying what we like our comfort with. Acolyte takes this giant, massive swing where you're just like, whoa, we're actually pushing the franchise in a new direction. We're actually pushing boundaries. And then Skeleton Crew is your fun, studio safe show that's just like your like comfort food as well. Like you can like if you look at it that way, how the fandom is like.
Yeah, I think if you kind of angle each show in a certain way, you can kind of get that. I almost would want to like somewhat swap things around because I do think that Skeleton Crew is more of that Force Awakens. Like that is the super safe, super fun. This is what people will enjoy. This is Star Wars. This is Goonies. This is Stranger Things. This is Space Pirates. Like there's not a lot to dislike here. And I think but it's not, the Star Wars galaxy is not changed radically from the Skeleton Crew. And I don't think it needs to be. I don't think every story needs to like totally pivot how everything works in the Star Wars galaxy. And I think that I look at Acolyte almost as like the Rise of Skywalker. As it's like it definitely has its core fan base, but it really did not go over well with Star Wars fans at large. Like I've met people that like not even part of that side of the fandom that were just like, I wasn't great. Like I got dinner with friends in Atlanta and they were like, yeah, like the Acolyte was not it. And I'm like, I really liked it. Like Haley loves the Acolyte, but she also loves the High Republic.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that there's obviously like we covered it when we were talking about the Acolyte. The people went off the wall with that show. Like my dad, I always love to use my dad as a benchmark for Star Wars shows. He is a casual fan. He loved Ahsoka. Ahsoka to him is Rosario Dawson from The Mandalorian. That's who Ahsoka is. He never once said, who's Hera? Who's Sabine? Who's this droid? Who are these people? I feel like I need to go watch this cartoon now. Like not once. Not once. Like the discourse that was going on with that, I was like, you guys are being ridiculous. Like they really, really nailed introducing characters with Ahsoka. And I think that's like but my dad like didn't hate the Acolyte. He just was like, he's like, I kind of got bored with it very quickly. He didn't have an issue with the space witches. He didn't have an issue with the chant.
Mhm.
He was just like, yeah, it seemed like it was going to be one thing, and then it turned into something totally different. So he said he liked it, but like he wasn't crazy about it.
But I do stand by the point, like, and I'm glad they're taking their time with New Jedi Order. I'm hoping that Star Wars continues. Like, I think having shows like your Skeleton Crew, where there's like your studio safe, this is just what people expect. Your Mando and Grogu's are fine.
Mhm.
Like, I think that's like perfectly serviceable.
Mhm.
But I want New Jedi Order to be like a Last Jedi, or to be like an Acolyte, where it's just like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna take this massive swing, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Then I don't think they're going to do that with her.
No.
Nope.
You know what movie they are going to?
Dawn of the Jedi.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only could James Mangold win on has he won an Oscar for Best Director yet? I know he's been
He
nominated.
was nominated with the Timothée Chalamet biopic.
Yeah, that's coming up this year. He could win an Oscar for that. Like, that's how much buzz.
Did he? I know he got nominated for Ford versus Ferrari as well. I don't know if he won anything for that too.
But he's like he's I think they're gonna give him probably a little bit more leeway to do these types of things.
Plus, he's already worked with Lucasfilm with Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I think with the new Rey movie, I don't think it's going to be like a color by numbers, play it as safe as possible movie.
No.
But I also think that the people at Lucasfilm and Disney are not stupid.
No.
I think that them taking a already divisive character and putting them in a more divisive scenario where, like, you know, they're risking changing the rules of Star Wars with Rey,
Well,
doing
yeah.
doing really bold swings of, like, what if she excuse me, what if she unlocked some crazy ability with the Force and she could, like, we go back to like expanding universe, like she's creating black holes.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, no.
Excuse me.
And
It's
that's not
it wouldn't go over well, and I don't think that
it wouldn't go over well because I hate that Luke Skywalker can do that in Legends. That is so stupid. That is stupid.
It is, but like there is something to be said about like characters breaking the mold, and this is kind of like my thing with the Holdo maneuver, right? Is the whole thing that sparked this was this one video. I'll link it in. We'll link it in the description because it's a good video, but I think it misses the mark on a couple things, and it's not. It doesn't just go after Star Wars, but it goes after a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that was brought up was, when you change the rules of something on, all of a sudden, like you pivot the rules, like it's never going to go over well with fans. And I think that's true to an extent. Like,
Yes.
like for example, the craziest thing, right, is if in Rings of Power season 3, they introduce some type of fantasy machine gun, right? Where it's like you can justify the lore behind it as much as you want, but at the same time, when you have like the elven orcish machine gun, it just doesn't feel right. No matter how you justify it. And I think that's where people do kind of try to go down the path of with the Holdo maneuver, as like no matter how much exposition you give it, it still doesn't feel right. But I also think that if you look at what the whole context of that whole movie leading up to the Holdo maneuver, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And if you look at it from episode 1, The Phantom Menace, to The Last Jedi, I think the Holdo maneuver makes even more sense. While you can definitely argue that The Rise of Skywalker doesn't do a great job of kind of covering those tracks, if that makes sense. I think the Holdo maneuver is very good. I think it's very symbolic. I think it's well shot. I think it sounds good. I think it lends into the desperation of the Resistance. I think that there's so many good things about the Holdo maneuver, and that's why I think that the Holdo maneuver is very good writing. And I also almost feel like it is too good of writing for Star Wars. And this is the thing that I'm sure lots of people will maybe disagree and be upset about. Star Wars is not an adult media.
Nope.
The thing that, like, personally, when it comes to the books, and I understand the distinction, is the young adults novels in Star Wars is all of the Star Wars novels.
Yes.
There are books out there that do have more mature tones.
Yes.
Like if we look at the High Republic, you have the YA novels and you have the mainline novels. The mainline novels are still young adult novels.
Yes.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I would say when you say young adult, you're right. The darker tones are. I mean, if you think about it, Into the Dark is one of the darkest books. Tales of the Nameless is also. Or Tears of the Nameless is also another one.
Even the expanded universe, like when you look at the Darth Bane trilogy, you look at something like Annihilation in the Old Republic, you look at Darth Plagueis, you look at the Yuzong Vong. Like, yes, there are dark and mature themes in there, but as soon as you step out of Star Wars and you look into something like Dune, you look at The Expanse, you look at any of Arthur C. Clarke's novels, right? They are far more mature. They have much bigger stakes. There are the emotions that people feel or that the characters feel are going to be more complex and more adult. And this is the one thing about bad writing in Star Wars. And I think that you can certainly have the argument of, like, was this written to the best of its ability or the best of the writer's ability? Sure, that's a discussion. But we are talking about a franchise that will always be hindered on. A 9-year-old still has to be able to watch this and get what's going on and enjoy it. It has to.
And Claudia Gray's even, like, not like back up your point with, like, oh, this author said this, so this is right. But, like, even Claudia Gray herself has said, like, Star Wars is just YA. And if you view it through that lens, it makes sense.
Yeah, like I love the conversation I had with the one of the bookstore employees in New York when I was buying Rising Storm when it was coming out, and then they asked me about it, and they go, "Oh, like this is like," she had not read it and not read any of the High Republic stuff, but she knew that, like, as she works at a bookstore, she does the ordering. She knows that this is like book 2, or like however their bookstore, or however, like, Random House or Penguin, whatever it is, whoever the publishing company was, like, this was a numbered book in a chronological thing. She's like, "Oh, like, you like Star Wars books?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. Like, I enjoy them." And she's like, "How do you feel?" Like, "I've read a couple. How do you feel about them?" And I was like, "I like Star Wars books. I know it'll never happen. I wish Star Wars would take itself a little more seriously in all of its fiction." And she was like, "Yes, 100%. And the thing is, we're never getting that. It's never happening. And that's why I think the writing discussion gets so caught up in the wrong ways. Because I do think that Rian Johnson did try to do very adult themes, very complex messages in The Last Jedi. And I think, I'm not trying to disparage Star Wars fans in any way. I just think that movie went over so many people's heads. I think it's one of my favorite Star Wars movies. Like, I love The Last Jedi. I think people just didn't get it. Like, and I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's perfect. No. I think that there are things that Rian Johnson could have done better. I think that there are characterizations that could have been handled better. I think, and it's not Luke. I think he did a great job with Luke. I think. Go ahead.
Even Ryan has admitted this himself. I forget what podcast he said this in, but he was like, because he was talking about, like, the differences between making Knives Out versus The Last Jedi, and, like, what, like, the differences between working for a studio versus doing, like, semi indie, but you're kind of funded by Netflix and you're kind of off in your own realm. And he goes, I would cut off my left arm to do a test screening of Last Jedi before it comes out, because when you're working with a massive studio, you're so hindered by everything has to be so secretive, and you're in your own cave and you don't know what you're making, and you're like, I don't know what works and what doesn't. I just have to kind of use my brain and just assume. He goes, with Knives Out, I could put it in front of, like, 3 or 4 different audiences and go, okay, they really like that, but they didn't really like that. So let me kind of rework the movie to make this work better. And, like, he goes, now watching Last Jedi and seeing how people responded to it, he goes, there are some things I would go back and go, okay, I would
Sure.
make this different. I would make this different.
Like, as someone who has like been in like creative capacities, like, you know, doing music and stuff like that, when I go back and listen to records I've made, I'm like, oof, why did I do that? Like it happens. Like no creative person is free of that. Of like, when you go back and like when you're making it, you're usually hyper focused on it, and you know it's like, yes, this is great, oh, and then I'm going to add this, I'm going to take this away, I'm going to add that, I'm going to take that away, and it's just a cycle, and you get very caught up in it. And George Lucas is the most guilty of this. And it's just so interesting for me that like when I look at the discourse of bad writing, and it's not limited to Star Wars, because we see it with every franchise now. We see it with video games, we see it with comics, we see it with shows, we see it with everything, right? Just everything's poorly written. It's all poorly written. And I do think that writing styles have changed wildly over the past 15 years, and the number one reason that writing styles have changed is social media.
Yep.
It is attention spans. Like our friend Bale at Grandmaster Bale gave Top Gun a 2-star review on Letterboxd. And like,
what?
Yes. When
Love you, Bale.
watching Top Gun with Bale, and this is not to disparage Bale or anyone, like, because Hereth, you're about the same age as he is. You're like 6 months older, like maybe. The way, like, because I'll even just say this, the way you responded to KOTOR is very similar to how he responded to Top Gun. It's just like, this is not how video games are made today. This is not how movies are made today. And a lot of the stuff we get today is very much anticipating that the audience will need to be, their attention has to be pulled to the screen at all times. You have to be doing something at all times to pull that attention into the screen.
Yep.
And Top Gun takes its time. That is a movie about flying jets. And most of the movie's not flying jets.
No.
Like that, and in a way that like when you read something like the original X-Wing novels, and then you read Alphabet Squadron, like that, wildly different. You watch something like Star Trek: The Next Generation. Or the original Star Trek, and then you watch Star Trek Discovery, or you watch Dune, you watch The Expanse, like we talked about, wildly different.
Yeah.
Like the way that something like Babylon 5 is structured and Stargate Atlantis is structured versus Three Body Problem and The Expanse, so much slower. They take their time, and this goes to like the thing that we talk about a lot is like The Next Generation. Each season is 26 episodes long at 45 minutes each.
That's like a perfect world. Like,
when you are okay, there's two things to remember about this, is that stuff like Babylon 5, stuff like Xena Warrior Princess, Star Trek Next Generation, stuff like that, was you were building a world and you were building it slowly.
Yeah.
And not everyone was going to watch every single episode.
Yeah.
Because it was on, Thursday nights at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., Eastern time. And some people were not going to be able to watch every single show or every single episode. So you had to have it so that if you miss next week's episode because you'll be out of town, and then you're going to tune in the week after, you don't want to feel lost. You don't want to feel like, what am I going to do? I don't know what's going on. And I remember distinctly, like King of the Hill had like a 2-part episode that was advertised on Fox. It was advertised on TV Guide. It was advertised like everywhere. And this was like the beginning of the internet, like when AOL keywords were still a thing. is you would get these banner ads for like the King of the Hill special because it was going to be you needed to watch this week and the following week. So they wanted people to tune in, and our friend JJ, made a video on TikTok, talking about this as well. It's like, how come we're not getting ads for Andor right now? And it's like, because they don't need to advertise it right now. Why would they advertise it right now? They're going to advertise it right when it's about to come out so that they don't lose the attention.
Yeah. Also, on your point of like how previous TV shows, not to get like too far into the woods about TV shows getting away from the new Jedi Order, but like I feel like how you are with Breaking Bad, where you're like, oh, I watched it for one episode, couldn't get into it, then I understand what the show is, but like I couldn't get into it, is how I am with The Sopranos. Even though I understand The Sopranos is what defined modern day television, I feel like that's what defined episodic TV versus like now we're more in the narrative TV where it's like every episode is building towards this narrative and this season arc instead of just, oh, here's an episode that's just kind of standalone, but kind of relate, but don't really.
The Sopranos is so important when it comes to TV narrative.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
No. I've never finished The Sopranos, so I can't even spoil it. But like, it is a show that like, and this was not just The Sopranos. This was HBO. So shows like Oz, shows like 6 Feet Under, shows like Carnival. Like you did need to watch these episodes like every week. Because people were paying extra for HBO. It was back then before Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus that you were fighting for. You had cable TV, and then you had HBO, Stars, Cinemax, these like premium movie channels that you would call your cable provider and say, I want HBO, I want Stars, and then they would bundle it like, oh, if you pay $27.99, you'll get both Stars and Cinemax, or whatever it was. Showtime,
boobies.
Skinemax, baby.
Time is just a giant circle. Now we have Disney Plus bundles.
Dude, I tell you what, like
new.
Sopranos is a good show. I'm in season 3, towards the end of season 3, and it's just
but here's
funny that I haven't seen it before now.
Here's the thing that drives me crazy, and I think you have these people that are like toxic, hate watchers that they just can't be, everything is terrible, et cetera, et cetera. But we have friends, we have people in our community that like, complain about episode length or season length or the way things are written, and I'm just like, I
complain about length. That's the only thing I usually complain about.
But like you would not be happy if we went back to how things used to be.
Yeah. You'd have to wait like a week.
It's not even that. It's like I am rewatching Babylon 5 right now. Great TV show, like incredible. Like it is literally okay. If Star Wars was a soap opera, that's what Babylon 5 is. It's incredible. It is very much about
the sci-fi version of Days of Our Lives.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's about like, the concept of Babylon 5 is it's a space station where after this huge war, this intergalactic war between humans and this alien race, all these other alien races, including the race that was at war, come together on this space station to learn to be a cohesive group of individuals. And so you have romance, you have treachery, you have betrayal, and it's all about people. It's not about like going out and having these big battles. There's action in it, of course. It's a science fiction show, but like it's very soap opera and it's very endearing a lot of times. And I think when you look at stuff like the X-Files, you look at Star Trek, any of the Star Treks from like the early original series to like the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, like it's very slow. You have that episode length, you have that episode number, but it's just like there's a lot of filler in there. Like there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't matter.
I think filler has become my new fight or flight word when it comes to TV.
Oh my god! I just want to jump off a bridge.
Because we're having that with like, I know you guys don't watch Invincible, but we're having that with Invincible. People are like, "Oh my god, this episode that came out today is just fucking filler." I'm like, no, it's not. Are we watching the same goddamn show, people? Because it's not.
But like it's the thing that like I think that a lot of people are spoiled and blissfully unaware of how spoiled they are with the state of television and how it is written. Because when we talk about something like Andor, we talk about something like Rings of Power, Game of Thrones. These are movies. I don't care what anyone says. These are fucking movies. You cannot tell the difference anymore. That if I were to show a random stranger 20 seconds of an episode of House of the Dragon and 20 seconds of like Lord of the Rings Return of the King, I would say which one's a movie, which one's a TV show. They wouldn't be able to tell. Like there's no way they would be able to tell.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things, like these TV shows are no longer like being scripted, being written, and then a set team comes in and like plywoods the sets together. Like that's not it anymore. That's not how it's done. Like the production of TV back in the day, it was very not very inexpensive, like, but compared to making a feature film, relative, like when you would get the X-Files movie, it was a big deal. When you got the Twin Peaks movie, it was a big deal. The Star Trek movie, the Stargate movie, huge deals because the production value was going to go up. We do need filler. I love a good filler episode. But it's just one of those things. It's just like, I think Cal literally hit the nail. I think there's a lot of entitlement going on with media. It's when the media gets so good, like, and not that everything's perfect and that it's not that it's like infallible, but it's just like, I understand. Go ahead.
That's kind of how I feel with Andor. Like there's people that are so entitled, they get a show like Andor, and then when something similar doesn't meet it, like then they start criticizing the thing as a whole. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think this is great because I guarantee you, if you had a magical time machine and you showed someone in 1995 The Acolyte,
the day I was born,
they would be blown away. I think if you saw that, so there were 3 television series that were released this year, and you showed them Ahsoka, you showed them The Acolyte, you showed them Skeleton Crew, you showed them the books, you showed them Star Wars Outlaws. They would be like, "This is the greatest thing ever."
No, they would.
And like,
go ahead.
No, going back to like what Luke was saying, like I'm so tired of like the entitlement in the Star Wars community because it's like everyone wants to create these factions of like, I only like Tony Gilroy Star Wars. That is Star Wars. No, I like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau Star. That is Star. It's like or like I like Leslie Headland Star. It's like everyone wants to create these factions of like, this is better than this, and then like if this doesn't meet this bar, it's not as good as this, and then it's like it's just a clickbaity engagement just to get views for 1 and 2, and even if they believe what they're saying, it's so annoying to just be like, it's because it's like, I get you're passionate about this, I get you're making content about this, but it's like it's so annoying to watch, even our mutuals in the community do stuff like this because you're just like, why are we doing this? Like, you could have not made that video and like you wouldn't have still the same amount of engagement. So it's like, what are we even getting at? And also, you know how the Star Wars community is. You're just riling up your community just to go after other projects when you really don't have to.
Yeah, it like high waves, all high ships. Like, you know, when the wave goes up, the rest of the boats do as well. So it's like, you should be rooting for these to work, like these shows to be awesome. You know what I mean? Because then it raises the expectation of the others, and it's some of these shows are dead on arrival because it's like the people just get so obsessed about it and so negative so quickly that I feel like it blows everything up. Now, going back to Rey, I really hope, if like what Chase was saying earlier, they put her in the line, like in the actual limelight with no other supporting cast. They better be ready for the hate storm that's going to be coming, because you know it's going to be there. This is the perfect opportunity to come out and say, we don't see people that harass Daisy Ridley as true Star Wars fans. And
I
that'll
don't.
never happen.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Because it's the same thing with like Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
His wife liked a thing of Donald, like a tweet or an Instagram post on Donald, like of supporting Donald Trump. Am I surprised? No. I'm not surprised at all. Like, we should be able to keep things kind of separate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think that not so much on the football side of it, but like on the Disney side of it. While yes, I think that you can have corporations that stand up for the people who like generate the content that they're selling, and I think I think that we get wrapped up in things a lot, and
Yes.
I know that Daisy really has spoken up about the treatment from the fandom, but the way that she feels about it is wildly different than how I think a lot of like normies like us. Well, like even Moses Ingram, and I think you do have people like Amanda Lesenberg that did like speak out. But even when Amanda Lesenberg spoke out, the number one thing she was focused on was like the positive stuff about it, because like she's not blind, she's not stupid. She understands that like there's going to be people that are just going to be upset that you're a Black woman. Like, and she knows that, and like, that doesn't make it right, that doesn't make it good, but she chose to say like, screw the haters and thank you so much for everyone that loves me.
I thought we were going to completely dive into what's been happening discourse wise with like the Disney Corporation as of like the last week, with the whole of them like bowing down to like the Trump administration and like going on Disney Plus and like on like, because it used to like, I forget, like Pop Culture Brian made a video about this where he was talking about like, because on Disney Plus, if you watch stuff like Pinocchio, like there'll be like a message of
there's disclaimers. There's disclaimers,
but they changed the disclaimers recently where it was like, it was like there's problem. They detail the scenes, like there are problematic themes like within the Native American community. We support Native American scenes and we acknowledge this is problematic and you should go out there and like support actual causes. And I think recently they changed it to there's problematic scenes in this presentation, or something very nondescript and very basic and generic. And people are like talking about that because of what Bob Iger has been saying lately, with like how they're kind of giving into grifters and kind of bowing down a little bit, and because of the Trump administration, and like it's like they're almost shifting gears a little bit to like what's kind of going on politically with the MAGA movement.
Okay, so here's the thing. I think there's so many layers to this. This is such a large onion to cut through. Number
Sometimes
one,
you can't cut through the onion.
Can't cut through the whole onion in an entire podcast. Number one, Disney was never your friend.
Yeah.
Oh fuck no! They wanted your money.
Yes. 20th Century Fox was never your friend.
Oh fuck no!
Lucasfilm was never your friend. Google, Apple, I don't care, Amazon, any huge corporation was never your friend.
At the end of the day, they just want the money. They just want the green stuff in your pocket.
There's a lot of misinformation. I don't know about the Disney stuff. Like this is what you just said is the first I've heard of it. I'm 100% going to take you at your word for it.
I saw something about it.
There is a lot of misinformation about DEI initiatives going on right now. Okay, I think just to knock this out of the way, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are corporations and donor programs that were giving corporations false information about DEI initiatives, like in 2015. This is true. It's shitty that they did that. So you had huge corporations like Google, like Boeing, Starbucks, et cetera, doing these DEI initiatives. As early as 2021, 2022, you had corporations backing out of DEI initiatives because it wasn't generating the revenue that they were told they were going to make. And across the board, everyone had a different statement, but the sentiments were always the same. It's like, we still have a core focus on the meaning of DEI, but it is no longer in our company policy. We are not trying to go after tax breaks. We are not trying to do all of this stuff as a corporation to make money off of the term DEI. And again, this was before Donald Trump was even elected. Like, we're talking through the Biden administration. I don't know if Disney is included on this, but the fact of the matter is, this was all corporate like bullshit from day one. This was never about like caring about indigenous people. This was never about caring about trans people. This is something that's so frustrating, is that these people who do complain about DEI are not complaining about DEI to champion for marginalized groups. They're not doing it because they truly feel that the Puerto Rican community was horribly misrepresented in this video game. Like, they don't care about that. They care about being whiny fucking children when anyone other than a straight white person or someone that they just cannot even begin to identify with shows up in front of their eyes. If they actually cared about what is wrong with DEI, they would have looked into it, and they would have looked into the corporate fuckery that ended up screwing over a lot of marginalized people. And just like how there were people that have like come out and said, like, I was literally a DEI hire and I was treated like shit. Like, because like I was only an asset to them. Like, I wasn't one of the company's, employees. Like, I was like, you're here to help us make more money because of your skin color or your gender identity or your sexuality, whatever it may be. And it was shitty, and like, shitty people did shitty things and fucked people over because of this. And that's not what people are talking about. And so, like, yes, now that there are no longer like loopholes or incentives to include DEI programs because of the current administration, yes, en masse, you have more corporations pulling out of it. And it's like, it's just all shitty all around, no matter how you look at it. And again, this onion's so deep. There are so many companies that are involved, so many donor programs that are involved, so many investors that are involved in this. And it's just like, you have this shitty group of people who are not even a blip on the radar of these billionaires that are trying to like profit off of like, DEI is gone and now I'm the smart one in the room. It's like, no, you're getting.
And again, I brought it up because like this was like a big talking point this week. Like, and I was like, it's Star Wars adjacent because of like New Jedi Order. We're talking about like the writing in that. And, like, I remember like a couple weeks ago, like we didn't bring it up because I think we were so deep with like Skeleton Crew at the time. It was kind of got lost in the shuffle. But like, I remember Daisy Ridley talked about this, and this is not really news to anyone that's been paying attention to Star Wars in the absolute slightest. She made like a statement that was like, we're making sure that like this is inherently political because Star Wars has always been political and Star Wars will always be political. So we're making sure that this isn't like getting lost in the writing of this. So like, and then that's also related to like them getting a new writer. So it's like, it's all connected information.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. So it's like the reason why I brought that up, I'm like, this is, even though like it feels like, I'm just picking this out of nowhere. Like, no, they all kind of flow into each other.
Let's just say this. As long as we as a society look at money the way that, like, if we allow money to rule everything, these are the consequences.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not going anywhere anytime fast. But I think the thing that I look at is like, where do we go from here? Like, does Disney continue to want to write stories like Moana? You know, do they want to continue to write stories like Soul and Inside Out? You know, do they want to tell stories like we saw with The Acolyte and with Skeleton Crew that we're going to potentially see with Rey's New Jedi Order? I hope we do. I hope we get more Marvel stories that, you know, as we have 3 white people up here on the board. Like,
yeah, I was just about to say this kind of makes it tough to talk about DEI.
Yeah,
when
yeah. But
you
like,
know what I mean?
but the thing is it's just like, I don't think that I have never felt that any company, any media company, let me say any media company out there has sought to no longer tell stories about white people. Like, every year there are plenty of stories that involve white people. I mean, one of the biggest movies of last year was Dune Part 2 with Timothy Chalamet was in 2 blockbuster hits last year. He is he is the straightest, whitest man there is in Hollywood right now. Maybe not the straightest, but like it's just like, you know, between Dune 2 and the Bob Dylan movie, you had Alien Romulus, which, you know, it was a white woman. You know, like, same with the original Alien, you know, it was a white woman. So like, I've never felt like people who look like me or like are not being represented in media. Like, I've been playing, you know, this year alone, like for video games, like I've been playing Stalker 2 and Sniper Elite. Those are stories about white dudes. Like it's not like they're going away.
No.
But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, you know, there's stuff like South of Midnight coming out that, you know, looks really good, and that's about a black woman in the South. So like it's interesting because like the way that people react to a lot of this stuff, and I think the way that they react to, again, the writing is very frustrating, and it's hard to navigate. And like for me, kind of maybe to loop back around before we kind of close it out, is it's just like the writing of Star Wars again is and I hope I'm surprised at this. I don't think it'll ever get past Andor as far as its complexity and maturity. I think that is the limit for Star Wars. And I'm fine with that. Like, I'm fine with that, because there's other things out there that want to push past that boundary, that have pushed past that boundary. I think that it's just one of those things that I think it's dangerous to lock yourself in to something like Star Wars or Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or anime, whatever it is. I think it's dangerous to lock yourself in. I love talking about Star Wars. It's my favorite. Yeah. I never get bored of talking about Star Wars, but I also understand, like, if I really want like complicated stories that dive into very uncomfortable things, there's other things for me to explore out there. Like, someone who likes horror movies a lot, like, there's very complicated and very mature stories inside of horror films that are worth talking about. You're never going to get it in Star Wars. I think we will get a Star Wars horror film at some point. I think we will get, I think we'll get a proper Star Wars murder mystery that does really well, like a film noir style Star Wars movie. I think that's all coming at some point. It will always be a PG-13 version of it.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll be more horror elements than actual straight up horror.
No, I mean, you look at something like The Conjuring or The Ring. Like, these are like, you look at most like horror films from like the 70s and 80s, even some of the 90s. Like, these are PG-13 horror films. Like, they're very scary. Like, Jaws is one of the scariest movies. It's PG. Like,
Yeah.
Like the Ring. It's funny because like I've been trying to get Haley to watch scary movies with me. She does not like scary movies with me. Watch The Ring. I forgot The Ring takes place in Seattle. That didn't help. So like she's like, we're like there's scenes where they're walking down. She's like, they're walking underneath the monorail. We live next to the monorail. And like we're watching it, and it's like, you know, The Ring was a phenomenon when it came out. Like it was this big deal. The movie still holds up today. It's an incredibly terrifying movie. PG-13. They don't curse in it. You know, it's not a gory film, but it's terrifying. And I think that you can have that in Star Wars. I think you could do a Alien style, or like, you know, being, you know, I think you could turn a like crime syndicate story into a horror film, like where you're being tracked down by, you know, some type of like, you know, criminal assassin, something like that, like where it is terrifying. I think you can do that. I think there's nothing that's really off limits, but there will be a ceiling that you can't break through in Star Wars.
Going back to the YA thing of like,
yeah, it'll always be that YA level. And it's like, especially with Disney, and it's not to disparage Disney, I don't think they have any interest in going past that. Like not that it makes me nervous, but like the only Marvel movie I have any anticipation for is Blade. It will be very hard to tell a compelling Blade story with the limitations that I think Disney wants to have there. And I mean, you guys could probably tell me more. Like, has Marvel really broken that, let's just say, that young adult level since
Deadpool and Wolverine was R, but it was very lightly R. I know Blade, they said they'll make it R. I think more of the issue that's going on with Blade right now, from what I understand of the production, is it's gone through like 8 different writers.
Yeah,
like
okay, it's just as someone who's not a Marvel person, I watched Deadpool and Wolverine. It was fine. It was rated R because of how many times they swore.
Yeah,
that was it. There were no complex themes there. There was no like, it was not raunchy in any way. Like it was like the scene where they're fighting inside of the van. Like, yes, there was blood, but like, we're not talking Terrifier levels of blood. You know, we're not talking Saw here.
It's not Logan where we're actually talking about complexity themes of like being a hero for as long as you are for decades and decades, and like and being in Western and that kind of stuff. Like,
was Logan pre-Disney?
Yeah, Logan was pre-Disney. It was Fox. It was a Fox era film.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really out of the loop with that stuff. But no, like Blade is like one of the only Marvel characters that and it's just because I like vampires. I really like. I want the Blade movie to happen, and Blade's pretty deep in how mature it is. Like Blade's conception is not pretty.
Nope.
So like, you know, it's one of those things, like a talented writer can make it work 100%. And I hope they do. And that's how I feel about Star Wars as well, is that if you have a talented enough writer, they can work their way around those limitations and tell a compelling story. I think Andor.
Look at Lawrence Kasdan.
Yeah. Like I think when you look at the themes of Empire Strikes Back, like very dark, very serious. I think it's frustrating because like, a lot of this comes from books, but like we don't get the duality of the relationship between Vader and Luke versus the relationship between Vader and Leia in the movies. We get it through the books, but like that could have been explored even more in a more mature setting. Like we'll never get that, and I don't necessarily know that we think that we need to, but it would always be nice. But like, it's just frustrating for me because like when I see people that complain about the writing, and I'm just like, go read something else, go watch something else. There are more mature things out there. There are more complex, detailed. What you are asking for exists in another franchise. You should go to that.
Yeah, and like shout out Star Wars, exactly. Like he said this before. It's like Star Wars is a great Marvel, Star Wars, any of these big franchises are great starting grounds to figure out what you like in media and what you don't like. And once you figure out what you like and don't like, go off. All right, I like samurai films. Okay, go watch samurais. Go watch westerns. I'm gonna go watch a western. Like Star Wars has everything that you want as a starting place because you'll know what you'll like out of it, and you can just explore other franchises. Like just Chase said, like because it's clear that it's like maybe you're just not into big franchise films or big franchise shows, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. As long as once you come to that conclusion, you are fine.
You know what's frustrating about that? Like, I've talked to people about it, and I've talked to people about it like in this community, like a lot of our friends, where just like, you know, they express, you know, like franchise fatigue, you know, whether that's Marvel, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, whatever it is, and they're like, oh, you should check out this. I'm like, I'm like, then why are you complaining? Shut up. Like, if you're complaining about something and someone tells you like, oh, well, what you're looking for exists, you should go here. Like, I'm not going to call out names because it's been so many people. The amount of people who I'm going to say post Kenobi Star Wars fatigue, where I was like, you should watch The Expanse. What you are looking for is The Expanse. That is what you should watch. And everyone's like, no, I just want Star Wars to do it. And I'm like, oh my God. And the amount of people who started watching The Expanse a year later. Haley and I are watching The Expanse right now. Haley fucking loves The Expanse. Like, and I'm just going to shout out because she's been amazing. Boba Fett, Christina, like she watched The Expanse and she read the books and she was blown away. She is not in the list of people who I told to watch The Expanse and then they shot it down. She has been watching it, and her journey to watching it was because like it has some of the best written characters. Like, as if you like Game of Thrones and you like science fiction, it is a must watch because it is people who worked with George R.R. Martin that wrote it.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
It is, I believe, and please fact check me on this. I believe it's an editor and an assistant to George R.R. Martin that wrote The Expanse. James S. A. Corey are two people. They also wrote the last expanded universe book ever. They wrote a Han Solo expanded universe book. Nice. It was the last, I believe it was the last or second to last book before it turned into Legends. But if you have Amazon Prime, like I would be down to do it's a long series. It's 6 seasons. But it's like 13 episodes. It's 13 episodes per season. They're about at 45 minutes to an hour long. It's what everyone says they want. The books go even deeper than the show does, but the show is it's intense. It's very good. It is Game of Thrones in space. It is literally Game of Thrones in space.
Sweet.
So I'd be down if we wanted to do an Expanse watch along.
We'll see.
We should.
We shall see.
All right. You look like you're about to pass out there, Mr. Egan.
I am a tired boy.
You're a tired baby boy. Well, before you go to sleep, tell me where I can find you. Where are you right now? Give me your address right now. Tell me where
you have my address.
We're gonna pull up the Jersey.
That's true.
You can find me at Jedi Master Eggs on all social medias. You can follow us at the Pod Ones on all social medias. Yeah, there might be some other content coming out here soon, possibly. We'll have more details in the coming weeks. But yeah.
Amazing. Mr. Hereth Productions, where can I find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me over at Hereth Productions on TikTok. I don't really post content, but you can see me just occasionally pop into people's comment sections and saying things. You can find me at Hereth Productions on Instagram, and you watch me just post random things on my story, I guess. And then you can find me over Hereth Productions on Threads and Blue Sky. I don't really use it, but you want to follow, cool. And then of course you can find me here at the Pod One Podcast.
Amazing. You also got a haircut. It looks good.
it does.
You could find me at Forward Into the Black on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Blue Sky. I think Blue Sky should be FWD Into the Black. Monster Hunter Wilds comes out on February 28th. That is 8 days from now. I will cease to exist when that happens. Thank you guys for joining me and talking about Star Wars writing, Star Wars fandom, Star Wars infighting, all that stuff. It was good to talk to you guys. And thanks to everyone who is talking in the chat. Thanks, Emma, for going off on Chaos Walking. I feel like I should now read those books. I was reading those comments, even though we weren't highlighting them. I saw you. But that'll do it for us for this evening. We'll see you next week. May the Klingons be with you.